I've been very fortunate. I've lived and worked all over the world, and I recently came back to the UK because of this situation, and have been thrust into this, which if you'd said to me 2 years ago, this is what I'd be doing, I would have thought you crazy. But I've looked at how other governments around the world work, and I think, unfortunately, the British government is clearly leading the world in terms of defining the response and the psychological operation and the manipulation and the coercion and the destruction and all of the things that it's doing to us as people and to the high street and to the education sector and to the health sector. And we need to stand up and we need to say enough is enough, yeah? Enough is enough. There are some key pillars that underpin all of the social movements that have gone before this one. If we go right back in time and we look at the famous movements from Gandhi to Martin Luther King and to others in Europe and to Eastern Europe, and there's one commonality, is that the people took back their sovereign rights. The people stood up and said, enough is enough. I no longer need to acquiesce. I no longer need to comply. And the three pillars which we need to take hold of and we need to embrace is, number one, you need to protest. Okay, number one is you need to come out and do these kind of activities, whether it's here at the community level, whether you do the larger marches in the major cities, in London, for example. There's over 600 towns and cities around the world that are protesting just like you are today. Yeah, 600. That just shows you the level of support that we have. So number one is you need to protest. Okay? Number two is that we need to embrace the concept of civil disobedience. Yeah, and you need to articulate that and work that in whichever way works for you. But it is about saying no. No, thank you. I'm just not going to do it. Yeah? Yes? Here's something that you can do, and I've done this myself. So when you get your invitation letter, I waited very eagerly for me to get my invitation letter to go for my vaccine in the right age group, and it finally arrived. So I went. I went to the vaccine centre in Canterbury. Number one, the first thing that I noticed was that it's packed. It was packed. I thought I was queuing up to go and see a movie. And what I did in a very calm way is I had all of my questions laid out on a clipboard, and I sat calmly and politely, and I went through this list of questions with the vaccinator, and I asked about efficacy, and I asked about yellow cards, and I asked about testing, and I asked about experimental, and in the end they turned around to me and said, I don't think this is in your best interests. And what this does is they have to defrost, yeah, this, what should we call it? Death capsule. Yeah, they need to defrost this thing, and if they don't use it within 48 hours, it has to be thrown in the bin. So by doing that, mine was already defrosted and ready to go, all lined up on a nice, neat napkin with a lovely smiling face, but I declined. I said, well, thank you very much for that kind offer. I think I'm actually with you. Doesn't feel like the right thing for me, and I left. So this is a form of civil disobedience, okay? When they come to the door, as they're going to, in the not too distant future, and I think as Mick Stott said, you don't need to approach these situations with violence, with rudeness, with an antagonistic behaviour. You can just very politely smile. Very politely just smile and just say, no thank you, not today. I don't wish to comply with your system, yeah? And that is what you all need to start doing, because we are running out of time. Yeah, and this is the thing that I think even people in the movement don't quite understand, is that we are running out of time. If they get their way, if they start to roll out this vaccination program to every member of society, from the very young to the very old, and I'm seeing images that just distress me to the core. Babies that are having that PCR shit dragged up their noses at 10 months old, for goodness sake, what are people doing? Why are people allowing this to happen? Why are parents allowing this to happen? Why are the people doing it in the first place? It doesn't make any sense to me. So we have to say no. And you have to just, when you see these things happening, we have to hold these people to account. Would you not agree? Yes? Yeah, we need to just do more. It's not long now until September. And we know that they're going to start ramping up the activity. And I was saying to somebody the other day, I feel like I'm reading a book, because I know what's going on, but I feel like I'm maybe 2 or 3 chapters behind. Yeah, we know that we've just moved into phase 2. Yeah, phase one was very much about Matt Hancock, and it was very much about the Tavistock-driven psychological operation that's been perpetrated on society, say that in one breath. But we've very clearly now moved into phase two. Yeah, and what I'm seeing is very interesting language. I went into Clark's Shoes in Canterbury, and they have a notice in the window saying, you don't have to wear a mask, but the government expects you to. Expects? Who is the government to tell me that they expect me to wear a mask over my dead body, yeah? For those of you, I know sometimes this feels very much like an echo chamber because there's a lot of us out here that know this, but to those that are perhaps listening on the sidelines that think to themselves, it can't get that bad, yeah? It can't be as bad as they say. Let me just tell you a little story. Before moving back to the UK, I lived in Dubai. And when this whole COVID situation started, for those of you who don't know, the Middle East is a very autocratic system. It's a very top-down system. It's a shakedom. When the person at the top says you're going to do something, you do it. Because otherwise you're in a situation where you're being dealt with from a legal standpoint in Arabic, under Islamic law, and that's not a position you want to be in. It's an amazing place to be. For many other reasons, but when this happened, the entire city, the entire emirate was put on complete and utter lockdown. Now, in that meant you weren't allowed outside of your compound. You weren't allowed to go for a walk. You weren't allowed to go for a run. If you went outside, even in a car, you had to wear a mask. You had to, if you wanted to go shopping, you had to input your details into a police app, and you were given a designated slot on when you were allowed to drive from your home to the supermarket, and that route was defined for you. If you deviated from that route, all of the speed cameras, which in Dubai are super high tech, were programmed to capture your details, who was in the car, your number plates, and the fines were exorbitant, $2,000, $3,000. At night time, you had Black Hawk helicopters over the residential areas of the residential districts of Dubai. You had the mosques broadcasting 24/7 that COVID is outside and it's going to get you. Yeah, this was the level of nefarious plan that was unveiled. In the evenings, there were trucks that sprayed the streets with goodness knows what. But my wife and I noticed that days after, there was a significant number of insects that were just dead by the side of the road. So you weren't allowed out. Every media source is controlled. If you spoke out on social media, you were arrested, your picture was taken, it was put on motorway signage, and you were basically ridiculed in front of the country. Yeah, that's what we lived with in Dubai, and that is the system that can so easily be brought into effect in this country. It's so easy for this to happen. So the next time you're talking to someone and they say to you, well, it can't get that bad, I'm telling you it can, because I've lived under it. Okay, now what we're going to do next is please take a quick break. There's some amazing people at the sides with an amazing amount of information. We've got the light paper, we've got information with Rachel and her stand about vaccination, we've got all sorts of information about Guardians 300. So use the next half an hour, well actually no, about 20 minutes, to just do a bit of networking, meet with other like-minded people. And then the big question is, who would like to go for a march through Canterbury? Oh, come on. Who wants to go for a march through Canterbury? Right, then that's what we're going to do. So if you need to go to the toilet, they're down that way. Be quick. We're going to wait for about 15 minutes. Now, just a couple of rules of engagement here. People, listen up for a second, okay? I know you're excited. When you're going through, listen up guys, because this is serious. When you're going through Canterbury High Street, we have to accept and respect that people do not necessarily share our viewpoints. If there is a belligerent element within this crowd, you will be asked to leave. If you are treated with contempt or with anger or with a belligerent attitude from other people in the high street, take a deep breath, smile, compassion, love, respect, tolerance, okay? We won't tolerate violence of any description, all right? So just take 15 minutes or so and we're going to depart from that end, okay? We'll have marshals in yellow vests which will be controlling the crowd. After the march, one more thing please, hello. After the march, we're going to return to the park where we have another absolutely fantastic speaker, Anna Dubusseret from Lawyers for Liberty, who have been doing some amazing work behind the scenes. Unfortunately, Anna's been stuck in traffic, so she's running a bit late. So we're going to do her address when we come back to the park. So we're going to leave in about 15 minutes. We'll be about an hour in Canterbury, and then back here for an afternoon of more speeches, more content, networking, love, compassion, all that good stuff. Thank you very much.